Southeast Asia, late 1960s. As the United States fights a controversial war in Vietnam, few Americans are aware that right next door in Laos, armed American servicemen are secretly conducting another war. The largest CIA covert operation in history. In the 1950s, a communist faction known as the Pathet Lao began trying to take over Laos. They were backed by North Vietnamese troops, who in turn were backed by the Chinese and Soviets. Americans who believed in the domino theory feared that if communists won in Laos, other countries in Southeast Asia would also topple. At Geneva in 1962, an accord was signed guaranteeing the neutrality of Laos. But the North Vietnamese broke the treaty before the ink was dry by leaving their troops in place. The United States felt a need to respond, but it would have to be done covertly. An assignment handed to the CIA.
We wanted to be able to say to the American people and to the United Nations that we did not have the United States military personnel in the country.
The CIA would run the war, but they would need a proxy army of foot soldiers to fight it. CIA operative Bill Lair found them, a Laotian mountain tribe called the Hmong. A tiny minority in Laos, the Hmong had a history of fighting the North Vietnamese.
I knew the Hmong from Thailand. They were a fiercely independent people. They didn't want a central government to bother them. They hated the communists because the communists try to organize everything into their system.
All they wanted from the very start, Bill would tell you, all they wanted was a plot of ground. They wanted everybody to leave them alone. And they fought and died for that.
Bill Lair gave the Hmong American weapons and lessons in modern warfare.
Tens of thousands of Hmong took up arms, men, women, even children, some of them as young as 10.
Họ có đưa phá chị.
Phó anh có đồ.
Em sister.
That part you work under you work at
He said can do two things automatically and semi-automatic.
How old is he?
10 years old.
Hmong, Lao, and CIA pilots flew thousands of dangerous rescue and ground support missions. Half the Hmong pilots were killed in action. Hmong soldiers ran spy missions deep inside enemy territory, even entering China to tap telephone lines there for the CIA. CIA personnel and Pop Buell told us they were ordered to keep the Hmong in combat, even though Americans on the spot realized it was a lost cause. We kept these guys fighting for us.
That's right.
Even after you and a lot of others thought it was pointless.
That's right.
By the time the U.S. finally pulled out in 1975, the Hmong had been decimated. Out of their total population in Laos of no more than 350,000, 10,000 had been killed, tens of thousands more wounded. Their casualty rate was 100 times higher than that of the United States in Vietnam. We used these men to fight for us. American soldiers didn't fight because these fellows were fighting in their place.
Every one of them that died, that was an American back home that didn't die, or one that was injured or wasn't injured. Somebody in nearly every family was either fighting or died fighting.
We promised, the United States government, you as a representative of the United States government, promised the Hmong people, the males, we will take care of you.
Absolutely.
You fight for us, we'll pay you. If we win, fine. If we lose, we'll take care of you.
Absolutely right. And I think they still have that faith in us.
When we lost the war, the North Vietnamese took Laos under their control, and ever since, the Hmong, the soldiers and their families, have been fleeing to the only haven they can find, to northeast Thailand across the Mekong River. But thousands of them hope desperately that Thailand is but a way station for them on the road to the land of their old ally, the United States.
In 1973, after the fall of Saigon, the Americans fled home and left the Hmong to fight without support. Due to the max capacity of how many passengers could fit, many were left behind.
What happened during the war in Laos was that the North Vietnamese were stalled very effectively by the Hmong, and that war is now continuing. The full strength of the North Vietnamese army is being brought to bear against the Hmong in their village areas in Laos.
It became clear very early that the officials in Laos regarded the Hmong as threats, and there is evidence of severe sustained attacks. Artillery and troops, reports of chemicals of some sort, poison chemicals being used against the Hmong. Those refugees that I've spoken with describe having lived in fear of their lives and living in the jungle for months and years, eating literally roots and leaves to keep alive, and making an arduous trek which lasts weeks or more to get to the Mekong River and cross to Thailand.
You get more of an idea of how rugged has been the Hmong's escape from Laos at the hospital in the United Nations refugee camp at Nong Khai. Levi Roque, a Philippine doctor who works for the International Rescue Committee, told us what a toll the escape had taken on his patients. The doctor told us about this woman, widow of a man who had fought in the secret army for more than a decade. She was coming across the river with 5 of her children. 4 of them were shot and killed. She was shot in the leg, and her remaining son escaped with a bullet wound in the back.
Do you get many gunshot wounds here in the hospital? People who are shot at as they leave Laos?
Yes, many.
Hmong tribesmen meeting recently at a refugee camp in Thailand. Just a few years ago, many of these same men were officers in the secret army. They were valiant, resilient, dependable fighters on the side of the United States in the Indochina War.
Our problem in U.S. program terms is this: we don't have enough numbers to accommodate those who served with us in Laos, both Lao and Hmong. We're way behind. We have a backlog of 20,000 at the moment, except for our own. The French is the only other government responding to this at all. On a proportional basis, the French are taking more refugees from Thailand than we are.
Dawn in the refugee camp at Loei. A special dawn for 165 Hmong boarding buses that will take them to Bangkok. In a few days, they will be in America, starting new lives in 17 different states. Those who saw the Hmong fight and die in Laos say they are stoic, that they rarely cry or admit pain. But this morning at Loei, it is something different. Almost all are leaving some family behind, cousins, fathers, grandparents, and there is no way of knowing if they will ever see them again.
You know, you read the paper every day and you read about refugees and you read about wars, and in my mind, I never connected with who is really the victim of all that.
They don't have nothing to play with, nothing to do. They play with broken glass. They get in those dumpsters. They eat those sticker bushes back there. They fight over them to eat them. You know, it's just, they don't need to be here.
Hang Sao is the leader of the Hmong in Washington State. At a yearly community picnic, he discusses problems facing the Hmong. I look for a job. Everybody expects you to have a degree or experience. I don't have a degree. No degree, no job. We are the lost people. If people in this country had to work as hard as we did, what would they do? If Americans tried to do the work we did in Laos, they couldn't do it. They're too soft. I don't speak English, but I have a dishwashing job. I try to do my best, but I don't know anything. They say, "How are you?" I say, "Okay." They say, "What do you want to eat?" I say, "Okay." They could say, "Eat shit," and I'd say, "Okay." Anthropologist Marshall Herlick.
The Hmong have a very strong sense of community. Individuals feel responsible towards their families, particularly the older people in their families, their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents. They have a very strong sense of responsibility towards their village or their neighborhood, towards other people in their clan.
Sue doesn't like the idleness afforded him by the welfare checks. He wants to work, but he doesn't even know what he can do within the American working context.
You're looking for what?
Job.
A job?
Yeah.
You speak it in English?
Yes.
How much?
I don't know.
You don't know? You
Yeah.
don't speak any English. I can't help you.
Yeah.
You can't get a job here. You'll have to go somewhere else, you know?
No.
Yes. You'll have to go somewhere else. I can't help you.
Mm.
There's no job here.
No.
No job.
Yeah.
No job.
Yes.
The responsibility of supporting this large family, once the welfare and educational programs are cut, rests on Hang Soo. His traditional sense of self-reliance and male leadership has been compromised by years of disruption and idleness. He deals with depression, self-doubt, stress.
Sadly, Hmong people became very depressed and lost because everything they lived by was shattered. Many teenagers did not have the parental love that they needed at the time. Teenagers made bad decisions because they had no one to look up to. Their parents were so caught up in the culture shock that they forgot the importance of the children's needs.